Okay guys, welcome to the next video in the series about how I got a 4.0 in college. And right now we are just kind of continuing with the outline of how I approach classes and especially juggling the different classes, what to study and when, and just how to study, like how to put the concepts in your brain, how to remember them. So in the last video that we talked about going to class, the strategies to take notes in class, and then what you do immediately after class and your first step when studying, which is rereading your notes, kind of how to go through and reread your notes, different like highlighting and just really kind of trying to like make those concepts concrete in your brain. So if you haven't seen that video yet, there's a link to go ahead and check it out, and that's going to be your first step. So look at that first and then come back to this video because this is what to do next in your studying steps. So once you've gone through, you've reread your notes, you've looked at the concepts that you weren't so sure about, you've looked at maybe like little details that you're starting to kind of pick up again because the first time you listen to it, you're not going to catch those details. The next step is to think about the big kind of like big picture concepts, because rereading your notes, you're going to be catching the smaller things. You're going to be catching the details. You're going to be catching little equations, nuances, little, oh, the professor said this is important. This is going to be on the test. Make sure you remember the difference between these two words. They're really similar. That's kind of what rereading the notes does. And those get you those like extra kind of cap on the top of your points. That gets you from a 90 to a 97 or from a 92 to 100. Those are kind of like the little cherry on top that you really need to boost your GPA because you need those high scores on your tests. But before you even get to those, you need to kind of get to like the bulk and the meat of the concept. So after you read through your notes, think about what you don't understand. Like, is there something that's just not clicking? You don't understand why something works a certain way. You don't understand how concepts are related. There's something the professor is saying and you've looked over your notes and it's still just going straight over your head. This is your time to dive into those concepts before you do homework, before you do anything else. Well, at least this is what I did, because personally for me, if I had a deadline, then I would get it done before the deadline. Like, I was stressed, and especially if it had a grade attached to it, I knew I was going to be getting it done to the deadline. But we're all procrastinators. So if you do your homework first and then you're like, oh, after I do my homework, I'll study, then you work on your homework for an hour or two, and then I'm like, oh, I deserve a break. That was really hard. Or I'm not going to study as well after, so I'm going to give my brain a break. Or, I mean, just like motivation, things come up in life. If you don't have like a set goal or a set timeline or a grade for your actual studying and reviewing the concepts, you're less likely to do it, especially if you've already done the things for the class and you can kind of like check the class off on your like mental checklist. So what I highly suggest is before you do things that are actually due for the class, go through and review the concepts and study for it. It's going to help you for the assignments because it kind of turns your assignments more into a review than like a preview for the concept. And that makes it an amazing way to test yourself. Because like creating questions for yourself can be pretty difficult. But if the professor's already giving you questions and assignments and things that are related to the topics, and if you've already studied it and you kind of have an idea of it in your head, then quiz yourself because you need to practice bringing that information out from your head for the test. Whenever you take the test, you're not just going to be reading things and like recognizing it. You need to be able to see it and then pull it out from whatever part in your head you have it stored and be able to remember it, reiterate it, and talk about it, explain it, write it into a fill in the blank, or make it pertain to a multiple choice question. So those practice assignments can actually turn into great study guides and great practice tests as long as you prepare beforehand and you make sure that you learn the concepts. Now, when I say big concepts, I'm referring to things that either the professor said important or it's kind of like a big, solid, reoccurring thing in the stuff that you're learning, or just things that you're like, I have absolutely no idea what they're saying. I don't know how this is going on, or it's something that you know is going to be tested a lot and it's kind of a key component of the chapter or the unit that you're working on and it's still just not clicking for you. So go through, as you're rereading your notes, try to be kind of like, if it's something that you can hit quick, I mean, something you can study in like 5 minutes, like, oh, I just forgot what this means, or I just forgot how these two connect, do it as you're reading your notes. But if it's something that's going to take you, like, you need to go look up some YouTube videos on it, you need to go back to the lectures and watch something over it, you need to go read the book about it, you need to go to like an action center tutoring, something offered by your university for it, that's something you set aside. So I just kind of wrote on like a little sticky note, like, oh, this is something that I really need to practice. So then you can come back after you've read through your notes and you're like, all right, now I'm going to sit down and devote 30 minutes of my time to this or something that's either basically the two requirements to make it something that you're going to write down and come back with your time is it is a large concept in the class. It seems very important. It's a base or foundation to understanding more information on that same test, or something that you know is going to be highly tested. So highly testable content and content that you just absolutely do not understand. Like, just it stresses you out looking at it. That's something that you actually have to attack first. And that is the huge part. It's a discipline thing because you want to review the stuff that you know. Don't look at the stuff you know. If they ask you about the stuff you know, you're already getting it right on the test. If you're going to be using your time studying, make it productive and go for the stuff that you don't know to make your weaknesses your strengths. That way, whenever you go into class and then, or you go into your test and you see something that you're like maybe a little iffy on, it's the details that catch you up. It's not the big, huge concepts. This review is also a time, say you understand everything, but you still need to just kind of go through it. If there's something for the class that you specifically have to memorize, if there's structures, if there's something that you had to make flashcards for, if there's a flow chart that you need to know the relationships for, this is your time to either make your flashcards, kind of quiz yourself on it, draw out your flow chart a couple times, draw out the equation, or if it's just a straight up quote, if it's something that you memorize, stand in front of your mirror, practice it. This is your time for memorization things. Because if you try to memorize something immediately before a test, it's just not going to happen. You need that spaced repetition. You need to come back to it each day or after each class and to be able to see it again, be able to store different kind of parts of it in your brain based off different connections that you're seeing on that day. You just basically need that exposure, and you need to practice pulling it back out of your head, which is why you do flashcards to quiz yourself, why you try to draw the flow chart or the pathway out, why you try to say it in front of a mirror, because you need to practice bringing it out of your brain. So for the next part of your studying, you have gone to class, you've taken really good notes, you've reviewed all your notes, you're really kind of starting to consolidate that information, see the connections between different things in the notes, and you've practiced the stuff that you need to memorize, or you're getting a more solid understanding because you're going back and seeing the stuff that you didn't quite understand yet, and you're doing great. So now if your professor has assigned any suggested or required readings, additional information, sources, videos, go back and watch these things. It kind of depends on your professor, and you'll learn a little bit. If they tend to be test heavy on these additional resources, I suggest doing this maybe before you go back and review your big concepts that you're not quite sure about, because that might be included, especially if it's something that you're going to take notes over. You can treat these kind of like going to class if it's like a required reading, but if it's supplementary or suggested or helpful, any of those terms for these readings, I would do it after you study your big topics, because the professor's basically saying like, hey, this is going to help you just kind of wrap your brain around it all. This is going to give you additional information. This is going to be something that's interesting and might be kind of testable, but it's not like the absolute just heart of what we're learning. It's not the heart of what you're trying to be tested over. And basically, it's not what you need to be putting all of your energy and just kind of mental force into right now, and your time, because your time is precious and you have a lot of classes to be studying and probably work or other things to be doing as well. So once you go through, you've done all your work, you've read all your notes and reviewed the concepts, and you've done all your supplementary materials. Now's the time to work on like an ongoing project or assignments. So to kind of clarify, there's some classes that might ask you to have a project that's coming up, like if you have a Spanish class and you have an oral presentation, or if you are in my honors class had me have an essay, but it was like a research thesis. We're supposed to work on it throughout the semester, and we kind of had checkpoints throughout the semester of things that we had to turn in. If it is a large project, and especially if it's worth a large amount of your grade, don't leave it towards the end. A lot of students and a lot of my friends have left their huge projects because they're like, oh, that's not due until like the week before finals week or during finals week. I can wait. And the thing is, the semesters are easier in the beginning of the semester. There's just so much less content that you've covered. There's so much less that you have to know. As the semester progresses, just naturally, inherently, that's the point of the class, you're learning more information. So it's going to get harder as you go throughout the semester, and especially if your final's cumulative, you're just adding more information that you have to know. So don't bank on it being easier at the end of the semester and having time to do it. If you can, knock a project out early in the semester. I always suggest if you have presentations, if you have deadlines for things and you get to choose the date, do it as early as possible. I mean, obviously, as long as it's on a date that works for you with like other things outside of school, go as early as possible, because you want to get it knocked out while this class is easier, while your other classes are easier, while you're less stressed because you don't have finals coming up. It's a great way to kind of make a buffer for your grade and just knock it, like just grab all those points, just kind of secure them in the beginning of the semester and not worry about it. So I highly suggest putting your projects early in the semester. If it's something that is due later, just work on it early, get it done. And even if it's something that kind of like needs to be taken in over time, if there's certain things that just based on the inherent structure of it, you have to work on it as you go through the semester and you can't just finish it early. Do as much as you can as early as you can is basically the point, because it's going to get harder as you go throughout the semester. So as much as you can, as early as you can, get it out of the way. You can sleep better, you can sleep more later, you can stress less. So work on your projects and work on your assignments. So if you have things that are due for the class, this is the time to do it, because a lot of times in college classes, assignments aren't worth a ton of points and they might not even be worth any points, but do them. The professors assign them for a reason. They really, I mean, yes, I guess there could be such thing as busy work, but it's really not. It's so you get the repetition, you get the practice, you see questions, especially if it's something that the professor makes or it's like a resource that they find and it's similar to their tests. If you can take anything that is similar to their tests, I highly suggest it. And if they put out guides or study practice problems that aren't for a grade, but they're just to help you study, those are what you should be using, because those are what the professors are finding and creating, and they really think that it's going to be beneficial for you. So do your assignments that are worth a grade first at this point, because you got to get them in, you have to get the grade. But then if there's anything that's not worth a grade, this is a great time to go in and practice, especially if you've reviewed your notes, you've done your concepts, you have your project always, don't have to worry about it, and then you have an understanding of the material. So this assignment is a practice. It's not like you're scrambling through it and you haven't studied it and you're like, oh crap, I don't know what I need, but I'll just get the grade in and I'll learn it later. Because then your next assignment is going to be up. You're going to be having to learn that new material, and you're never going to catch up on the old material. So use it as practice, use it as test practice, and knock it out. One small note I do have is this is an ideal situation. And as we know, studying does not always go ideally. And part of being a good student, part of studying hard, and part of getting your good grades is making a good schedule, being disciplined and keeping that schedule, and making sure that you get things done beforehand and you give yourself enough time to study. If it comes to a point where your assignment's due at midnight on Thursday and you haven't even reviewed your notes yet, and it's 10 p.m. on Thursday, get the assignment in. It's not worth taking a 0 on or getting a bad grade on. I mean, again, this is for your grades. I kind of hate it, but the system of the university, especially if you're going to a pre-health school, is based on grades. So, I mean, I'm not trying to change the system here. I'm just telling you how to work it, how to go about it, how to do it, how to make it work for you, how to make it show that you're a good student. And you need to put your grades first. So if it's just an absolute emergency situation, get the assignment in. But approaching it, this order is so important, because almost everyone's a procrastinator. And if you don't think you are, then you just haven't gotten burnout yet, or you're just super excited and still motivated. But wait, because it's going to come. So if you have that assignment waiting, like it's Wednesday morning and you have that assignment due Thursday night, but you have to read your notes, you have to review your concepts, and you have to work a little bit on your project before that assignment, you're probably going to start Wednesday morning. But if you just, oh, my assignment's due Thursday and then I'll do all that stuff after, you're going to start like Thursday afternoon for your assignment. So this is just a great way of holding yourself accountable, because it's all, I mean, if you're watching this video up to this point, it's because you want to get good grades. It's because you want to do well. So this is a way of kind of setting like a self-regulation on yourself, because a lot of college classes, a lot of upper division classes, universities don't give a ton of structure. And that's something that a lot of students struggle with whenever they're studying. Or it works as well if you're high school and you're online and you're taking AP classes or whatever the case may be. You need to be able to make that schedule for yourself. And this is a way of holding yourself accountable and kind of giving yourself mental deadlines so that you keep on working and it's not just like oh, I'll push it back. So I highly, highly recommend this order. It helped me a ton, and it just kind of helped me set out what I needed to do. And once you get your assignment done, then it's kind of like you get to breathe, like you understand it. It's so much more fun doing assignments when you actually understand them, and it's not just stressing you out. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't know that, I don't know that, I don't know that. I need to study, and then you get so freaked out and you don't even study. But it's kind of like, wow, look at how much I've learned. I understand that. I can put this together. Okay, this makes sense why it didn't work out. And it's basically just a study guide, and you just feel a lot more confident going forward. You go to the test and feel like you've gotten to practice it a lot more. So I hope this helped. It was one of my main go-to strategies. That's basically how I've approached every class in college. You can adapt it kind of to your own style, to your own schedule, but I highly recommend it. If you have any questions, please reach out. One last thing. Okay, so why this is so important and why this is so great is this study habit shouldn't change up to a final. And honestly, finals shouldn't really be a huge deal if you've been implementing this because you've already been studying throughout the whole semester. The majority of finals are cumulative, and honestly, those tend to be a little bit harder. So I'm kind of focusing this on those cumulative finals because if you need to adjust to something that's being a little less difficult or something that's maybe just kind of a little bit more specific in your studying and it's not as much content, then that's amazing. Scale back your review a little bit when you get to finals. But if you have a cumulative final, you've been studying for it the entire semester because you've been reading through all of your notes from the first day all the way through. So you've been keeping it fresh in your brain. You've been doing the assignments and learning as you go through. So when you get to finals, it's basically just kind of like a little bit more just like, oh, I forgot that detail. Let me just skim over. Oh, let me skim. Oh, yeah, it's just refreshing yourself. It's not learning something again because you crammed for the test 2 days before and then it totally went out your head right after you were walking out of taking the test, and then you have to like relearn these concepts. You have to try to put it all back together for every single class, and it's intimidating, it's impossible, it's stressful. Don't deal with that. So if you've been doing this, you've been preparing for your final the entire semester. So I love this because your schedule and your kind of study habits for finals week shouldn't really change. And then it's less stressful too because you've done it. You know how you're approaching finals week. A lot of people get to dead week, which is the week that's kind of like really quiet. They call it dead week because professors aren't supposed to like assign quizzes or assignments or anything that week. It's kind of supposed to be just wrapping up the class and studying. But people don't know how to study for the finals because they're just overwhelmed. It's like this whole semester of information and for multiple classes, how do you even go about it? So when you've been doing this, you'll be ready. You don't have to cram for finals. I actually slept a ton during dead week and right before finals because sleep's important. Sleep is really good for your brain and you're going to do better on your test. And when you kind of have that knowledge base and I would just have to refresh, I would just kind of go back through each one of my classes that I've been studying for the whole semester and kind of look at, oh, this is something really important. This is something that they might have added for the final. Um, yeah, it's just really refreshing yourself. And I mean, I would go work out, I would sleep, I would drink a lot of water, just kind of the good test taking things to take care of your body and your brain before tests that didn't have to do with the information. And it was such a great contrast between people who were cramming. I'm not to say it's not going to be stressful. Trust me, I was stressed out before my finals, but that's just the kind of student I am. I was just stressed about getting grades. I wanted to get really good grades. But if I hadn't have done these things, I don't know the state I would have been in. But I had the confidence kind of just going through, even if I had all the stress of like kind of performance stress or whatever, which I will upload a video on my test taking tips, how to beat test anxiety, how to kind of prepare your brain for it, kind of mental visualization that I do. But that's getting off on a tangent. This is about the content, and if you are doing this, you should be ready for the content. You should feel confident. And you should feel good going into your final. Also, kind of very last note, some finals still have new information even though it's cumulative. So a lot of classes, basically what that means is you have to be studying everything from the whole semester, but then you also have to be learning new material just like you're taking a new course or a new test. So basically, if you've been banking on, oh, right before finals, I'll review all this, I don't have to remember it now. No, because you're still going to have to learn new information right before finals anyways. So instead of taking a whole like unit 4 test and the whole final that's been all of the semester, so basically just 2 insanely stressful and high stakes tests at the end of the semester, know the final, just kind of be taking like a review quiz, if you can put it in your head that way, and then take your unit 4 test or whatever the final unit of new information would be. So this really sets you up for finals week. It sets you up for a lot less stress around finals week, and it sets you up to get good grades and to really know the information, because the way to get good grades is to know the information. Because no matter what, even if like a lot of professors might have tricky questions, they're testing on whether you know it and whether you can apply it. And if you know it through and through, then you can apply it. So I really hope this helps you guys, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Please reach out. In my bio, I have a website and I have an email. So just if you have any questions or anything that you want to see, this is for you. So see you guys later.